Listen closely, because what you're about to hear runs against nearly everything you've ever been told about relationships. The woman who stops reaching out, who goes quiet, who slips out of a man's notifications, she does not lose his attention. She captures it more completely than she ever did before. While the world keeps telling you to chase, to pursue, to stay constantly visible, the real truth is something far more powerful and far more counterintuitive. When you stop contacting a man, you don't fade from his mind. You take it over completely. And if you stay with me through everything that follows, you'll understand exactly why this happens, how it plays out on a psychological level, and how certain women use this exact truth to create obsession without lifting a single finger. Absence creates something that presence simply never could. This is one of the most misunderstood dynamics in human attraction, and yet it's also one of the most powerful. Most women believe that staying in constant contact is what keeps them relevant in a man's mind. They assume that if they disappear, he'll just move on, forget about them, or find someone else entirely. But the reality works in the exact opposite direction. When you are always available, always responding, always right there, you become predictable. And predictability is the enemy of fascination. A man's mind does not obsess over what it already has secured. It obsesses over what it has lost, what suddenly feels out of reach, and what has become uncertain overnight. When you stop contacting a man, you trigger something deeply primal in his psychology. For most of his interactions with you up to that point, he has been the one in control. He reaches out, you respond. He initiates, you engage. That dynamic keeps him in a position of certainty. He knows where you are. He knows you're interested. He knows that whenever he decides he wants your attention, it will be there waiting for him. But the second you stop, that certainty shatters completely. Suddenly he has no idea where you are. He doesn't know what's going through your mind. He doesn't know whether you've moved on or whether someone else has entered the picture. That uncertainty opens up a kind of vacuum inside his head, and his thoughts come rushing in to fill it. The male brain is wired to solve problems and to chase after what feels uncertain. From an evolutionary standpoint, men have always been hunters at their core. They're built to pursue what moves away from them, not to sit back and appreciate what simply stays still. When you're constant, you're still. When you pull back, you're in motion. And the second you start moving away, his instinct to chase kicks in automatically. This isn't manipulation on your part. This is simply how psychology works. He might not even understand what's happening to him. All he knows is that you're suddenly on his mind more than you ever were before. He starts checking his phone more often. He wonders why you haven't texted. He replays your last conversation over and over, trying to figure out what shifted. And the longer your silence stretches on, the stronger this pull toward you becomes. Absence also forces a man to face what he had been quietly taking for granted. While you were present, he could enjoy your attention without ever really thinking about it. He could reply whenever it suited him, knowing full well you'd still be there when he did. But once you stop, he realizes your presence was never actually guaranteed in the first place. He starts asking himself questions. Did I do something wrong? Is she upset with me? Has she lost interest? Is she talking to someone else now? These questions circle endlessly in his mind because there are no answers available to him. And without those answers, his brain keeps drifting back to you, trying desperately to make sense of the silence. This is obsession in its earliest form. It begins as simple curiosity, grows into preoccupation, and eventually settles into full fixation. What makes this dynamic even more powerful is that it completely flips who holds the power in the situation. In most early interactions, the man feels like he's the prize. He sets the pace. He decides when to text, when to call, when to make plans happen. But the moment you stop reaching out, you take that control away from him entirely. Now he's the one left waiting. He's the one sitting in uncertainty. He's the one hoping for a sign of your attention. This shift changes everything because men simply aren't used to occupying that position with women they're genuinely drawn to. And when they do find themselves there, they don't retreat, they lean in harder. The longer your silence continues, the more his imagination takes the wheel. Without your actual presence there to ground his perception of you, his mind starts filling in the blanks on its own. He begins remembering only the best moments you shared, the best conversations, the best feelings he had around you. He conveniently forgets the mundane parts or anything that once frustrated him. His memory idealizes you because absence gives fantasy all the room it needs to grow. You're no longer simply the woman he used to talk to. You become the woman he might have lost. And that possibility of loss makes you infinitely more valuable inside his mind. This is exactly why men often come back stronger after a period of silence than they ever were during constant, uninterrupted contact. The silence didn't erase you from his thoughts, it magnified you within them. So many women worry that if they stop contacting a man, he'll simply assume they've lost interest and move along without a second thought. But here's what actually tends to happen. If he was genuinely interested in you to begin with, your silence is going to bother him. It's going to create real discomfort inside him, and that discomfort is exactly what drives him to reach back out. Men don't easily let go of women they truly want. They let go of the women who chase them too hard, who make themselves endlessly available, who strip away every last bit of mystery from the connection. When you stop, you restore that mystery. You make him wonder about you all over again. And wonder is the fuel that desire actually runs on. It's worth understanding that none of this is about playing games or acting cold towards someone. It's about recognizing your own value and refusing to overextend yourself inside a connection. Far too many women wear themselves out trying to hold a man's attention through constant one-sided effort. They text first every time. They plan every outing. They carry the entire conversation on their own. They handle all the emotional labor by themselves. And what ends up happening? The man relaxes completely. He stops trying simply because he no longer has to. You've made everything too easy for him. But when you stop, you're communicating something far more powerful without saying a single word. You're communicating that your attention isn't endless, that your interest comes with conditions, and that he actually has to earn the privilege of your presence. This isn't cruelty in any sense. This is self-respect, and self-respect happens to be magnetic. The psychological concept behind all of this is called intermittent reinforcement. When something is always available and predictable, it loses its reward value almost entirely. But when something comes and goes unpredictably, the brain becomes almost obsessed with obtaining it again. This is the exact same mechanism that makes gambling so addictive. It's the same reason people stay far longer in unhealthy relationships than they ever do in healthy, stable ones. Unpredictability creates a craving that steady consistency simply cannot produce. When you stop contacting a man after having been consistently present, you introduce exactly that kind of unpredictability into the dynamic. He has already tasted your attention. He has already felt your particular energy. And now that it's suddenly gone, his brain starts craving it all over again. He'll reach out not because you asked him to, but because at some point he genuinely can't help himself. Another layer running underneath all of this is ego. Men carry egos, and those egos are deeply tied to their ability to attract and hold the interest of the women they want. When you stop reaching out, his ego takes a direct hit. He starts questioning himself. Why did she stop talking to me? Am I not enough for her? Did I mess something up? Is she seeing someone else now? These questions feel deeply uncomfortable to sit with, and discomfort always demands some kind of resolution. The easiest path for him to resolve that discomfort is simply to contact you, to check in, to find out whether you're still interested in him. And the moment he does that, he has become the one doing the pursuing. You've reversed the entire dynamic without ever saying a word. Women who truly understand this principle stop trying to prove their worth to men. They stop over-explaining themselves. They stop chasing. They stop making themselves available around the clock. Instead, they pour their energy into their own lives, their own goals, their own happiness. And in doing exactly that, they become exponentially more attractive because a woman who is genuinely busy, genuinely fulfilled, and genuinely unbothered by a man's attention is a rare thing to encounter. She stands apart from everyone else. She challenges him. She makes him put in real effort. And men, whatever they might say out loud, are naturally drawn toward women who make them work for it, not through drama or manipulation, but through simple, quiet self-possession. This is exactly why the women men end up obsessing over aren't the ones who are always available and present. They're the ones who hold real boundaries, who have full lives outside the relationship, and who refuse to twist themselves into knots just to keep a man interested. These women understand that their absence isn't a punishment being dealt out. It's a statement. It says, I have a life of my own. I have priorities of my own. And you are not entitled to my time simply because you happen to exist. That statement carries real weight, because it forces a man to decide whether he actually wants to be part of your life or not. And if he does want that, he will show up for it. He will reach out. He will pursue you. Men also end up obsessing over women who stop contacting them because silence generates real emotional tension. Tension is the exact opposite of comfort, and comfort is what kills attraction over time. When you're always available, you're offering comfort. He knows he can reach you whenever he wants, so there's no tension in the equation at all. But the second you stop, tension floods straight into that space. He no longer knows where he stands with you. He doesn't know what's on your mind. He doesn't know if he still has access to you the way he once did. That tension is uncomfortable for him, sure, but it's also remarkably addictive. It keeps him engaged, keeps him thinking, keeps pulling him back in an attempt to resolve it. And the only real way for him to resolve that tension is to reconnect with you directly. This entire principle works even more powerfully in situations where a man had started taking you for granted. If he had grown used to your constant attention, your sudden absence is going to feel like an actual loss to him. And loss happens to be one of the strongest motivators in all of human psychology. People rarely appreciate what they have until the moment it's gone. While you were always there, he simply had you. But once you stop, he starts to realize he might not have you anymore at all. That realization shifts his entire perception of you almost instantly. You're no longer the woman who's always around and available. You become the woman who got away, and men chase after what got away far more intensely than they ever chased after what simply stayed put. The real beauty in all of this is that it requires absolutely no effort from you. You're not crafting the perfect text message. You're not plotting out elaborate strategies behind the scenes. You're simply living your life and refusing to build it around a man who hasn't earned that kind of central place in it. This isn't about withholding affection or acting cold towards someone. It's about holding real standards. It's about understanding that your time, your energy, and your attention carry genuine value, and that value should go to people who actually appreciate it. When you stop contacting a man who wasn't appreciating you properly, you create the space for him to realize exactly what he was losing. And if he never comes to that realization on his own, you haven't lost a single thing. You've simply saved yourself valuable time and energy. Another critical piece here is that silence communicates confidence all on its own. A woman who stops reaching out without offering explanations, without stirring up drama, without needing closure from anyone, shows a level of self-assurance that most people simply don't possess. She doesn't need his validation to feel whole. She doesn't need to know exactly why he went distant. She simply moves forward with her life. That kind of confidence is genuinely rare, and it stands out immediately. Men notice it. They respect it, whether they admit that or not, and they find themselves drawn to it, because a woman who doesn't actually need them becomes a woman they suddenly find themselves wanting. It's also worth pointing out that this entire dynamic reveals a man's true intentions in a very clear way. If he was genuinely interested in you from the start, your silence will bring him back around. He'll reach out. He'll ask what happened. He'll try to reconnect with you. But if he was never truly invested, if he was simply enjoying the attention you gave him without any real commitment behind it, your silence will be met with silence right back. And that tells you everything you actually need to know. You don't have to sit there wondering. You don't have to guess at anything. His response, or his lack of one, hands you all the clarity you need. And clarity is its own form of power. This is exactly why the women who master this kind of strategic absence are never left feeling desperate. They don't beg for anyone's attention. They don't chase after men who are actively pulling away from them. They understand that if a man genuinely wants them, he'll show it through his actions. And if he doesn't, they're perfectly content moving forward without him. This entire mindset is liberating because it removes all the anxiety that comes from trying to force a connection into existing. You're no longer sitting by your phone waiting. You're no longer picking apart every single word exchanged. You're simply living your life, and the right man will rise to meet you exactly where you are. Men also become obsessed with women who stop contacting them because those women remind them of their own lack of control in the situation. Men are generally used to holding control, especially in the early stages of attraction. They set the pace of things. They decide when to escalate the connection. They choose when to commit to something more. But the moment you stop reaching out, you take that particular control away from them. And losing control tends to be deeply unsettling for most men. It forces them to sit with their own feelings, their own level of interest, their own investment in the connection. And that kind of confrontation often pushes them straight into action. They reach out because they want to regain some sense of control, to understand exactly what happened, to see if they can still pull you back in. But by that point, you've already shifted the entire power dynamic in your own favor. This isn't about playing hard to get in some calculated way. It's about genuinely being hard to get. And there's a real difference between the two. Playing hard to get is a performance. It's calculated, and it often comes across as transparent to the other person. But being hard to get naturally flows out of having a full life, strong boundaries, and genuinely high standards. You're not pretending to be busy. You actually are busy. You're not pretending to have other options. You genuinely have them. You're not pretending to be unbothered by his attention. You're truly unbothered because you know your worth was never dependent on any one man's interest in the first place. That authenticity is exactly what makes this whole dynamic so effective. Men can sense when a woman is performing a role, but they simply can't resist a woman who is genuinely living her life well. This obsession also builds because your absence leaves behind a void that he tries to fill with thoughts of you. While you were present, he could talk with you, interact with you, satisfy his curiosity about you directly. But once you stop, that outlet disappears entirely. His curiosity doesn't go anywhere, but now it has nowhere left to turn except inward. He starts wondering where you are, what you're doing, who you might be spending time with, what's going through your head. These thoughts loop over and over because there's no resolution available to him. And the more they loop, the more deeply embedded you become inside his mental space. You stop being simply a person he used to talk to. You become a question he can't stop trying to answer. This dynamic also works because it taps directly into the fear of missing out. Men are naturally competitive and they genuinely dislike the idea of losing something valuable, especially to someone else. When you stop contacting a man, his mind immediately jumps to the possibility that you've moved on, that your attention is now going to someone else, that another man is enjoying what he once took completely for granted. And that fear pushes him into action. He doesn't want to lose you to somebody else. He doesn't want to look back later and regret not pursuing you harder when he had the chance. So he reaches out, often with more effort and intensity than he ever showed you before. Women who understand this stop pouring their energy into men who are lukewarm at best. They don't try to convince anyone of anything. They don't over-explain themselves. They don't chase. They simply withdraw their attention and quietly observe what happens next. If a man is genuinely interested, he'll notice the shift and respond accordingly. If he isn't, his silence saves you valuable time. Either way, you come out ahead. You either gain real clarity or you gain his renewed effort. Both outcomes beat sitting in limbo, wondering whether he actually cares, while you keep pouring energy into someone who isn't giving anything back. The final piece of this entire puzzle comes down to self-worth. Women who can stop contacting a man without falling apart inside, without spiraling into obsession, without needing instant validation, are women who already know their own value. They understand they bring something genuinely rare to the table, and they're simply not willing to hand it over to someone who doesn't recognize it. That self-worth forms the actual foundation underneath this whole dynamic, because if you stop contacting a man purely as a calculated strategy, while internally you're desperate for him to respond, it won't work the way you're hoping. Your energy will give you away every time. But if you stop because you genuinely believe you deserve better, because you're truly focused on building your own life, that energy is exactly what creates real obsession in him. He will feel it. He will sense that you've moved on emotionally, and that sensation is precisely what drives him to try pulling you back. In the end, men secretly become obsessed with women who stop contacting them because those women represent everything humans crave most instinctively: mystery, challenge, and genuine value. When you're always available, you strip away the mystery entirely. When you chase after someone, you remove the challenge from the equation. When you beg for attention, you lower how valuable you appear in someone's eyes, but when you simply stop, you restore all three of these things at once. You become the woman he can't quite figure out, the woman he has to actually work for, the woman he suddenly realizes he might actually lose. And that particular combination is intoxicating to him. It doesn't matter how confident he normally is, how many other options he might have, or how hard he tries to play it cool. When a woman who was once fully present suddenly disappears, she becomes the one he can't stop thinking about. Not because she chased him down, but simply because she stopped. And there you have the truth behind why men secretly obsess over the women who stop contacting them. It was never about playing games. It was never about cruelty. It comes down to understanding human psychology, to valuing yourself enough to walk away when you aren't being properly valued, and to recognizing that your absence can speak far louder than your presence ever could. What makes this whole idea worth sitting with is that it isn't really a trick at all. It's simply an honest reflection of how human attention works. We are wired, all of us, to notice change more than we notice constancy. A steady hum in the background eventually disappears from our awareness entirely, while a sudden silence in a room we expected to be full of noise pulls our focus instantly. The same principle plays out in how a man experiences a woman's presence and her absence. Constant contact becomes background noise after a while, no matter how much he initially enjoyed it. But a sudden, unexplained quiet becomes something his mind cannot simply tune out. It becomes the very thing he keeps circling back to, again and again, whether he wants to or not. This is also why so many women feel like withdrawing goes against their instincts. Everything in you might want to send one more message, to clarify, to check in, to make sure things are okay between you. That urge comes from a good place. It comes from caring. But caring about someone does not require you to carry an entire connection on your own back. It does not require you to keep offering more than what's being returned to you. Real connection is built through mutual effort, mutual curiosity, and mutual investment. When only one person is doing all the reaching, the relationship isn't actually balanced, no matter how much affection is behind it. And restoring that balance sometimes means stepping back rather than stepping in. It's also worth remembering that this entire dynamic only works because it's rooted in truth rather than performance. You cannot fake genuine self-possession for very long. Men, whether they could articulate it or not, tend to sense the difference between a woman who has quietly walked away to protect her own peace and a woman who is simply performing detachment while quietly hoping for a reaction. The first kind of energy is calm and unshaken. The second kind is fragile and easily seen through. So the real work here isn't learning a clever technique to use on someone. It's building a life so full, so genuinely yours, that stepping back from someone who isn't reciprocating becomes a natural response rather than a forced one. So if you take only one thing away from all of this, let it be this. Your presence is a gift, not an obligation you owe to anyone who hasn't earned it. When you remember that, you stop needing to manufacture distance as a tactic, because it becomes simply what happens naturally when someone isn't matching your energy. And that quiet, grounded version of you, the one who isn't waiting by the phone, the one who isn't replaying old conversations, the one who has simply moved forward with her own life, is the version that men find impossible to stop thinking about.